Good morning, colleagues. I'm hoping that by the time you view this recording, all of the snow and ice will have dissipated and spring is on our way. I'll be honest, I'm a little distracted. My ceiling is leaking and there's water dripping, but I'm committed. I need to get this recorded and get it available to you so you can start to use this information to improve the quality of your learning and teaching, just as Cafe would have you. So if you'll bear with me, I need to do some screen sharing. Hopefully that will go well. Okay, hopefully this gets us set up. Yes, so what we're going to do is spend some time talking about the NSSE, and I appreciate you joining me on that. My name is Onie McKenzie, and I work within student affairs, focused primarily on assessment. One thing I would ask as we proceed, it might be helpful for you just to retain attention and interest. If you kind of make some notes along the way, you have received access to this presentation before, and that might be helpful. And I'm curious as to which of the NSSE findings surprised you the most and why. And I'd love for you also, we would do learning pauses to have discussion. Obviously, we won't be able to do that within this context, but if you want to consider how the results either reflect and confirm your experiences or they contradict your experiences in the classroom. And then also think about your assumptions about our students and how these findings. And lastly, and most importantly, toward what or which engagement indicators and high impact practices, even just outcomes, do you think you could make a positive contribution moving forward? And maybe this might be something that you gather with your colleagues within your academic department and have some discussions. If you want to break down of results specifically by major, the Office of Assessment and Institutional Research can help you do that. I will say the way they pull together majors doesn't exactly align with how we do it. But for some of you, that would be a good opportunity. I'll start here. The overarching premise, one thing that I find really helpful about the NSSE is, yes, it's a nationally benchmarked assessment tool, but it also can be used as a means of education, particularly for new faculty and new staff, because the theory behind it is a suggestion that the amount of time and effort students put into educationally effective activities is directly related to desirable outcomes related to learning, personal development, and other things that we would have them happen for them as a result of being here. We don't always know what those are. And so if you will, you can consider this kind of a list of best practices because the content of the NSSE represents student behaviors that are desirable and highly correlated. The research, it comes out of a number of people have contributed to it. Some of you may even remember George Koo, Indiana, some of his visits to campus. We've spent quite a bit of time in Farmville with us. I always have to mention this particular textbook because it makes me proud. This text, Student Success in College, describes lots of policies, programs, and practices that 20 different institutions have instituted to enhance student achievement. These institutions were chosen because they had higher than predicted graduation rates and higher than predicted outcomes on the engagement indicators as measured by the NSSE. Longwood is a part of this group. It was called the DEEP Project. Sounds pretty interesting. But what it has to do with, again, for us, is that there are lots of examples of ways in which these colleges and universities have created conditions that matter to learning. And Longwood is cited over 27 times in this particular text. So regarding the administration here at Longwood, how that has worked for us. As a means of combating survey fatigue, Longwood participates in the NSSE every 3 years. And when we do, we play all the social games. We bombard students and faculty alike with emails. We do all the media blitz. We litter the campus with yard signs, and we shut down all competing student surveys. We offer some piddly kind of participation incentives. And you might ask why, what's the big deal? But it's because we've committed to using these data to measure progress on increasing number of strategic initiatives. And so this is going to be very helpful to us in looking at the benefits of the Civitate core. We've used it to measure SHEV competencies. And also this year in 2020, Longwood participated in 2 of the topical modules, one entitled Civic Engagement and the other Inclusiveness and Engagement with Cultural Diversity. And the more we do to get a better response rate, the better able we are to break down and better understand experiences among a lot of our student subgroups. So be they athletes or Greek affiliates, first generation college goers, maybe even some traditionally underrepresented populations. So that's part of why it's so important to us. There are some personal reconciliations, concessions. I just simply need you to make. Blindly accept a few perspectives just because. And you do have access to the slides that serve as justification for these kind of assumptions, but for the next hour, just work with me if you don't mind. In the early spring of 2020, we held a NSSE class participation competition, and 51% of our first year students responded to the NSSE and 40% of our seniors responded, which gave us a pretty good, robust response rate of 45%. And it gave us a group total of respondents of 634 students. So consequently, the demographic characteristics of that respondent group are representative of the larger Longwood student population. Just trust me. Through the Office of Institutional Research, you can gain access to all of the NSSE generated reports that include Longwood comparisons from 3 different groups. It's all institutions who participated, all institutions of the same Carnegie classification who participated. And then the third one is a smaller group of Southeast public institutions, and there are 103 institutions within that group. The work that I do, the Longwood generated reports, Onie McKenzie generated reports are provide comparisons to that Southeast public institution group. Why? It's a smaller group. They are of more interest to us as peer institutions, and in some cases aspirant institutions. It's a more competitive group. I'm in the business of breaking this information down so that you can use it to improve the quality of the learning experience for our students. Not marketing, but those who are in marketing may want to refer to some of the other results of some of the other comparison groups. Okay, that's the external comparisons. Internally, we're in a nice opportunity this year because we have administered this every 3 years. We can look at our 2020 results compared to 2017 and 2014 to kind of see if there are any trends going one way or the other. We're allowed to make those comparisons across time, but not across class levels. We're not encouraged to make comparisons between the freshman class results and the senior class. Why? It's just a different construct, and the student groups are very different. Our first year class will include students who don't persist. Perhaps they'll drop out, and our senior group includes those who may have dropped out and returned to us. They will also include those who have transferred in, plus the freshmen. The first year experience is just very different construct than the senior experience in terms of engagement expectations. Also, I won't waste your time. You all know the limitations of self-reported data. There are conditions that, when in place, confirm or increase the validity of the results, and those are descriptive for us here. The other thing is even though the questions are behavioral in nature and they're framed within a specific time group, the scales are very vague and very general, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's look at this real quickly. This just shows us, because the NSSE is a national undertaking, the results that you will see have been subject to extensive weighting to ensure that they are representative of the appropriate populations. It's curious and helpful to remember that the number of respondents we had in 2014 was 812. We had 666 students respond in 2017 and 624 in 2020. But our response rates have stayed very consistently strong, and you can see here how they compare to the other institutions. Now, this is how the prompts and scales read. Despite the simplicity of the NSSE, the fact that we have administered every 3 years in the same time, in the same way, coupled with the national benchmarking, this kind of makes for good stuff. But again, you can see how these scales are pretty imprecise. This slide depicts how the NSSE is organized. There are 10 dimensions of student engagement, and they're called engagement indicators. And you can see those along the right in blue, and they are organized across 4 academic themes. And they have also included 6 high impact practices that we will review. And what I'm going to do with this presentation is just focus on the items that I think are relevant to faculty and their classroom experiences. So we'll start by making sure you understand how we can look at some of the external comparisons. So we're going to compare again Longwood's results relative to those of the Southeast Public Comparison Group. And to produce an engagement indicator score, the response set for each item is converted to a 60-point scale. Thus, a score of 0 means that the student responded at the bottom of the scale for every item within that engagement indicator, and a score of 60 indicates that responses at the top of the scale on every item. These are symbols that I've used, very standard notation with regard to degrees of statistical difference. Here's the trick. If you just want to know where we did well, where the Longwood responses exceeded those of the Southeast Public institutions, simply scan for upward pointing triangles. The darker filled in upward pointing triangles are even better. Downward pointing triangles represent comparisons not to our favor, and especially so for the darker filled in downward pointing arrows. So you might recall in the past I used colors for this notation. Yeah, and then I was popped with a $900 bill for handouts that were printed in color. Won't let that happen again. So I've made some changes, and we've kind of switched it up, and I'm using triangles, upward and downward pointing for you. So if the numbers kind of overwhelm you, scan for the triangles. So this is what the results, if we're doing an external comparison of Longwood means to the Southeast Public, and remember it's on that 60-point scale. You can see how they're organized. Again, you can simply scan for the triangles. Here you'll see that of the 20 possible first year and senior comparisons from the 2020 results, 8 are to Longwood's favor with any level of significance, and 1 is at a practical level greater than 0.3 in magnitude. And that falls into the student-faculty interaction as reported by the 2020 Longwood seniors. You don't realize this yet, but that's a big deal. The 2020 seniors, that's a kind of hard group to please these days. So kind of keep that in mind as we go. Here's the same data from 2017. And so again, scan for upward pointing triangles, indicating a significant comparison to our favor. Here, of the 20 possible comparisons, 6 are to Longwood's favor, though with only 1 at a practical level greater than 0.3 in magnitude. And again, it's in the student-faculty interaction. But I know that for me now, I can't remember what the 2020 data looked like. So I kind of feel like I need to put it all together This is the 2014 data, the same chart. You can revisit this, but this is what it looks like when you put it all together. And then you get totally overwhelmed because it's just too much, but hold on. Here we go. This is a little easier to digest. So notice again that the first years are separated from the seniors, and you can follow along in reverse chronological order. So the 2014 is in the far right, 2020 is going to be in the left columns. Remember what the triangles mean. The dashes simply indicate there's no significant difference in the means. They're essentially the same. So this kind of summarizes for you our positive and negative mean comparisons for each year. Again, it's easier if you start in the right, far right, 2014 columns. And you'll see that in 2014, of the 20 possible comparisons, we landed only one of the best possible comparisons with the darkest upward pointing triangle. But 12 of the second best possible comparisons, 2 comparisons where we fell short, and none where we really bombed. In 2017, we had the same number of the darkest triangles, but we lost 7 of our still positive triangles, and we earned 1 less of the downward pointing. And in 2020, they're very similar ratings, but we were gaining some strength, especially with our first years. Keep that in mind. You'll start to see that lots of places. So again, on this chart, you can look at the differences among the first years only and seniors only by each year, and you'll notice that we're recovering some ground that we lost with our first years in 2017. Again, pay attention to that trend. This is another way that helps us get a sense of how each of the engagement indicators, the content itself, how we've done, where we've done well consistently over time. And I've put in some green shading to kind of help you follow or note some positive responses or findings. The symbols accrued within the student-faculty interaction, that engagement indicator jump out as being consistently high, and ever more so for the seniors. Congrats, faculty. That's something to be commended. And the quality of interactions have been mostly strong, with the exception of the seniors in 2020. Pesky group. And this was before they lost their commencement. This was administered in early February, and the survey closed the same week that we kind of invited our students to go home, or gave them that opportunity. Strongly encouraged, I think that was the wording. So I think that's important. Next, you'll see strength in the collaborative learning and effective teaching practices, followed by the ratings of supportive environment. And you also see some improvement in the academic challenge engagement indicators. And we will go through that in some depth so that you can kind of better understand and do some reflection and try to think, what accounts for those ratings? Quickly, if you're not already impressed with our results, maybe you should be, because check this out. NSSE has a policy not to rank institutions, but these results compare the engagement of Longwood students with 2 groups of institutions identified by NSSE for their high average levels of student engagement. The first group includes institutions with average scores placing them in the top 50% of all participating NSSE institutions. So this is not just the Southeast Public. This is a NSSE determined higher group. And the second group averages scores place them in the top 10%. And what I've done, a check mark signifies areas of distinction where Longwood's average score was at least comparable to that of the high performing 50% mean group. And the asterisk signifies Longwood scores being comparable to that of the highest 10% group. And so I'll give you some time here to kind of check this out. You can see some consistent high results in the areas of discussions with diverse others. This has to do with the frequency with which our students have discussions with others who have diverse backgrounds or diverse socioeconomic groups or gender preferences, religion, etc. And then you'll also see the continuous or consistent strong results within the student interaction. And we've all known, kind of Longwood's claim to fame is being a supportive environment. And so you can see how that plays out. Okay, this we won't spend time here, but this allows you, if you care more about internal comparisons than the external comparisons, maybe you care more about how it's progressed over time. Here at Longwood, this table shows you those means from each of the three measurement points. And this allows, I just highlighted for you where you've seen improvements from from 2017 to 2020. And in the cases of collaborative learning, you see consistent improvement over the years. Collaborative learning. So we're starting to see lots of evidence, I think, in my opinion, of benefits of that Civitate core and the work we've done there. We'll keep going and see if you pick it up too. So at this point, I'm hoping that you are interested in kind of understanding what items comprise those 10 engagement indicators. And I'm going to show you just a few of the engagement indicators that I think are most relevant to your work. But the report that I've posted on the Student Affairs Assessment website contains performance charts on all of the items from all of the engagement indicators. But first, I need to make sure that you know how to read these tables. So the title of the chart will tell you which of the engagement indicators you're examining. And the prompt for our example here read, during the current school year, about how often have you done the following? And it offered that same 4-point scale, ranging from never, sometimes, often, and very often. And within these charts for each item, I have collapsed the top 2 response options and calculated the percentage of those at Longwood and at the Southeast public institutions who responded at that level. That, by the way, if you're in the top 2 of those 4, that is how NSSE defines substantive or significant engagement. So that's considered to be substantial level of engagement. And then I noted the difference in those percentage points between 2020 Longwood and Southeast public groups. And I've also added in the 2017 and 2000 percentages. So you can determine if any consistent trend has been emerged. Obviously, I have no life. So in this case, the Longwood first-year students who responded to this prompt in 2020, 42% of them said, yes, I have evaluated what others have concluded from numerical information, and I've done it very often or often. And that percentage point is 1 point higher than that of the 2020 Southeast public first-year students. Furthermore, in 2014, 36% of our first-year respondents said the same, and in 2017, 26 said they often or very often evaluated what others have concluded from numerical information. Pardon me, I'm getting dripped on. With regard to our seniors, our students still fall below the level of engagement compared to the Southeast public seniors by 3%. That's what the negative sign would indicate for you. But you can see the trend at Longwood is rising. And again, there are 12 charts just like this, but we're only going to look at 3 of them now. So these are the 4 items that comprise the higher order learning engagement indicator. And we're looking at the degree to which colleges and universities promote student learning by challenging and supporting them to engage in various forms of deep learning. So the prompt read, during the current school year, how much has your coursework emphasized the following? Very little to very much. And again, if you care about external benchmarking, the shortcut is to just look for the positive percentage point differences, because those numbers indicate the extent to which our 2020 percentages exceeded that of the 2020 Southeast public percentages. So if you scan down and you start to see some larger ones, in 2020, 75% of our responding first years indicated that they had quite a bit or very much evaluated points of view, a decision, or an information source. And that 75% was 7 percentage points higher than that of the Southeast Public first years. And our seniors too report doing this. So you can kind of see how that works and come back and spend some time. This has to do with the 7 items that comprise the reflective and integrative learning engagement indicator. And perhaps I think these positive findings bode well for the Teaching and Learning Institute that comes out of CAFE in May, and the last 2 in 2017 and again in 2018 focused on integrative learning and the new core curriculum, and also integrating perspectives, building the next level of the Civitate core. I'll give you a minute to soak this in and reflect on what else might be influencing those results. Okay. These are the response percentages from the 5 effective teaching practices indicator items within the theme of experiences with faculty. So the question again, during the current school year, about how often have you done the following? And look at the improvements on the practice of providing feedback on a draft or a work in progress. We've had lots of discussions about the timing of messages, and with regard to what we communicate to our students, we've talked a lot about nudges, and it appears to be paying off. We're getting some positive results here. This is a different kind of chart. Students here were asked about how many hours they spend in a typical 7-day week during the following. If they're preparing for class, studying, reading, writing, doing homework or lab work, analyzing data, rehearsing, and other academic activities. And you might be curious to, or ask yourself what you think is the average number of hours students spend preparing for class. But this is what our students tell us, and how it compares to what students at the Southeast Public institutions are saying. So in 2020, the highest number of hours a week, 13.6 hours, is said to be spent by first years preparing for class. And that hourly average is very similar to the 2017 and 2014 averages. And our seniors report spending 12.5 hours a week. And both of those weekly averages were below what the Southeast Public students report spending. Just out of curiosity, the second highest time seek for our students is the number of hours they spend relaxing and socializing, which was 12.2 hours a week for first years and 11.9 for seniors. That surprised me. Followed by 6.3 hours and 8.1 hours for seniors on co-curricular activities. So it's curious if there are any surprises here. Are your assignments in line with these averages? And if not, do they need to be adjusted, or do your students need to invest more hours? Or maybe are they investing too many in comparison to others, and in the whole, in perspective of the whole, their entire academic load? So you'll also see the number of hours students spend on assigned reading, and then also what's the average number of pages devoted to writing assignments. And obviously some classes are more writing intensive than others, but this is an interesting finding that might need to be probed further. So I think you'll enjoy this chart. It has to do with perceptions of challenge within courses. And so this chart only represents the first year student responses over time. So there's no comparison yet. The seniors are a separate chart. And the question read, during the current school year, to what extent did the courses challenge you to do your best work? And they were given a 7-point response scale. 57% of the 2020 Longwood first year reported high levels of challenge in their courses, compared to 47% of the Southeast Public first year students. And that 57% exceeded the 49% from 2017 and the 52% in 2014. And the gap between the Longwood responses and the Southeast Public responses has grown over time, when in 2014, our percentage was below that of the comparison group. Take that in for a minute. Pretty exciting. Same prompt here for the seniors. 57% of the Longwood senior respondents reported high levels of challenge, compared to 54% of the Southeast Public seniors. And that 57% exceeded the 51% from 2017, and both fell short of the 63% in 2014. So the gap between the Longwood and Southeast Public responses has reversed itself since 2017. You can always come back and spend more time. Changing gears entirely as quickly as possible, we're going to talk about what's called high impact practices, and due to their positive associations with student learning and retention, certain undergraduate opportunities are designated as having a high impact on learning. And typically, these practices demand considerable time and effort. They facilitate learning outside the classroom. They encourage collaboration with diverse others, and they provide frequent and substantive feedback. They are reputed to prompt transformative learning. Here are the ones specifically, the NSSE addresses, and you can see those with the asterisk. They tend to be more accessible for upper class, primarily seniors. And so that's kind of important to keep in mind. This is the chart that it's set up just like the earlier engagement indicator performance charts. So it displays over time the percentage of Longwood students who engaged substantially with each high impact practice. And remember what the asterisk reveals. And any positive number indicates how much higher Longwood's 20 percentage is over the Southeast Public comparison group. And a negative number indicates how much lower the percentage is from that of the Southeast Public group. So now you're probably in total overload. Just scan. And I've also shaded in green for you the things that are important and have improved significantly, or not improved, but have much higher participation when compared to the Southeast Public. The bottom line, the recommendation by NSSE is that students participate in at least 2 high impact practices over the course of their undergraduate experience, at least one during their first year and another within the context of their major. And so if you look at the bottom row, you'll see that our seniors tell us that in 2014, 91% had participated in 2 HIPs, 88% had in 2017, and 90% did in 2020. What really matters here, from my perspective, is access. We need to make sure that there are all of the subpopulations of our students have equal access to participating in these kinds of things. And it's difficult for some students who have to work over the summers, or they don't have a car, they can't travel, or they're on financial aid. Do they still have access to the same kind of learning that internships or field experiences and study abroad affords them? What are those barriers for our student participation, and how do we reduce them? And what kinds of opportunities that afford the same kind of learning can be sponsored on campus, making it a little bit easier for students who have to work over the summer to earn income to participate. So those are the kinds of things we want to think about when we're studying these practices. Last section, in student affairs, we have a little opportunity to impose direct measures of learning. So I get very excited and always create this group of what I like to call value-added experiences. And so what I've done is taken 10 outcomes or measures of gain and categorized them into 3 categories: personal and social gains, general education gains, and practical competency gains. And I don't have time to show them to you separately. They are in the complete slide deck that's available on the website. But these prompts read, how much has your institutional experience contributed to your knowledge, skills, and personal development in the following? And they are given that same 4-point response options. This chart, I've just taken the same 10 and listed for them for you in descending order. And these are the percentage of our students, our seniors in 2020, who responded with, yes, I have, as a result of being at this institution, gained quite a bit or very much in the ability to think critically and analytically, or speak clearly and effectively. And that's how these fall out. And it's interesting to me, all of us can make contributions to these particular outcomes. I was pleased in 2017 when I was doing some closing the loop work with our student affairs area. The staff within the student conduct and integrity decided they wanted to specifically try to address writing clearly and effectively. And so they set an action plan to increase the number of reflection papers that as educational sanctions for students who had been held responsible for some kind of violation. But what was different is they made a vow to also provide prompt and effective feedback. So it wasn't just something the students turned in, they would get that feedback on that writing so that they too would be contributing to that particular outcome. So that's how we kind of want to think about these. And you might take some time here to think about how you can contribute or have contributed to all of these. Last section, these are perceptions of institutional emphases, where our students perceive Longwood as making an emphasis, where we are emphasizing certain things. It's also measures of the quality of their relationships across campus, and then just overall satisfaction. Those charts are included in the complete slide deck. They're not here, not all of them, because we don't really have time. But I've chosen the ones that I think are most interesting for you. So I think it's important for us when we're considering what our students perceive as being important to Longwood, are those things in balance? In student affairs in the past used to be more about get involved. Now it's very much get involved purposefully, get involved in ways that are going to further your academic goals, you're a student first, extracurricular, and these things can't compete. It has to be in balance, and it's better if it's purposeful and helps you meet your own goals for yourself, be they academic and career as well. And so this is kind of, again, just scan for the triangles to get a better understanding here. And I think if you just scan down the columns, what you're going to see is we had pretty high desirable areas of emphases in 2014. The ratings fell in 2017, and they're now going back up in 2020, but still not at the rates captured in 2014. And the highest mean of this 4-point mean is 3.3 here. So there's lots of room for improvement here. These reflect the quality of the relationships that students have with each other, students have with academic advisors, and students have with faculty. And you can see again, with regard to comparison to the Southeast Public, our highest ratings in that regard were again in 2014. We're starting to regain some of that, and it's kind of interesting to look at how those ratings have changed over time as well. This is important for you to understand. There are 2 sets of handouts that are available to you through the website, and they show different things. The first one includes, just for the 2020 results, the response frequencies of every item and the external mean comparisons for just 2020. The second handout provides external mean comparisons, again, on every item, but over the last 3 administrations. So, the example is that sometimes it's just simply helpful to know what percentage of our students never did something? And so this allows you to look at that data for 2020. If you think, how could I possibly make meaning of any of that? This is just way too much. Just don't forget, I love a good category. And so I have categorized all of these items into the following 21 categories here. And so I've highlighted the ones that I thought would be of most interest to you, and you can simply go focus on those particular tables. The numbers correspond with these different categories. And there's an index at the beginning of it as well. And this is an example. These are kind of ratings with student conversations with faculty. And if you see that 62% of our seniors are often or very often discussing their career plans with their faculty, are you having those conversations? Are you? 62% of our seniors are. Are they with you? And if not, is that something that's important to you or something that needs to be changed? 42% of our seniors report significantly being engaged with faculty and activities other than coursework. Is that something you do? And maybe that's not your thing, but what is your thing? Here's a troubling finding. Approximately 13% of our first years never discussed their academic performance with a professor. And another 39% of our first years did only sometimes. So as disappointing as that might be, our students report doing these behaviors more frequently than the students at the Southeast public institutions. But there's obviously some room for improvement there. These are student classroom behaviors. And yeah, you guys, you may beg to differ with some of these findings. So they're asked how often have they done the following. And as for coming to class unprepared, 31% of our first years in 2020 and 23% of our seniors said, nope, not me. I never came to class without completing readings or assignments. Sometimes I feel like your social media posts would lead me to believe that is not your impression or your experience, but this is what our students are telling us. But what is interesting here to me is look how social our students tend to be when working with peers to understand their course material. This is something we often observe when walking past the small rooms in Upchurch. What we wanted to happen as a result of that space has. A lot of our students have found an opportunity to find themselves, and particularly those kind of on the perimeter. There's a place now for them. They've been able to find their posse, and they can join. You see them often in those small rooms, sometimes studying. That's obviously what we would prefer, but also engaging in kind of similar activities and common interests. Okay, it might be gaming, but there's something to be learned from that experience as well. So I just think this information is helpful. This is the second chart that talks about classroom behaviors. And if you spend some time with it, you can kind of examine and have some reflection on where you fit into these particular desirable behaviors. Okay, study habits. You can say who's claiming to review their notes after class and who's not, and who's summarizing materials. Let's see how those rates again compare to that of the Southeast Public. This might be helpful to our Academic Success Center. Might want to study some of that further. Okay, so at this point, this is my granddaughter. Is she not the cutest? And she is encouraging you to put your feet up and do some reading and dig in and see what you can get, make some meaning and figure out where you can make some contributions to these kinds of outcomes. Where is this available? The full NSSE generated reports can be accessed through the Office of Assessment and Institutional Research. The reports that I've referenced in the handouts that I've mentioned for you, they can be found. They are kind of nestled in, nestled in Solomon. And then you go to Student Affairs. just the Student Affairs General webpage. And then you go to click on the assessment link. And then on the assessment and evaluation page, you'll find all of the kind of major standardized surveys that we've worked on in the past, including the climate survey. But you also, there's a link to the NSSE website. And that's where you'll find all the things that I've referenced, as well as the reports from 2017 and 2014 as well. So yeah, hopefully that will kind of be fun for you to kind of over the weekend or whenever you can grab some time, put your feet up and do some reading. And if we were in the cafe chat, I would ask you to kind of give me some feedback on how you felt about this particular presentation, what was good, what was helpful, and what was too much. What do you need a little bit more of, and what do you need a little bit less of? And I guess Cafe has their evaluations as well. So I'm not quite sure how that will be handled. But anyway, at this point, if you have questions, you can easily find me in the website or in my office. Certainly, I'm responsive to emails and be happy to help you out any way I can. Okay, thanks so much. And I am going to go get my COVID vaccination and cover up my computer before it drowns. And hopefully next time I see you, this will all be behind us. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time. Bye-bye.